Rain tapped gently against the cafe windows that Friday evening, the kind of rain that made the city lights shimmer like tears. Inside, the soft hum of jazz and the hiss of espresso machines blended into a comforting rhythm, one that wrapped strangers in the illusion that life, for a brief moment, was warm and kind. In the corner seat, Maya Brooks clutched her worn-out purse and glanced nervously at the clock. 6:58 p.m. She had exactly $2 left in her wallet and 3 in coins. Enough for one drink, maybe. It had been another exhausting week at the hospital. 12-hour shifts, skipped lunches, endless nights. Being a nurse wasn't easy, especially when your paycheck disappeared faster than your energy. Rent was overdue. Her old car had finally broken down. And still, she smiled, because kindness was the only thing she refused to lose. Tonight, she'd done something she never thought she would. She agreed to a blind date. Her best friend insisted, "Maya, you never take time for yourself. This guy's a real gentleman. Trust me, you deserve this." But as she stared at her reflection in the cafe's window, damp hair, tired eyes, a faded uniform under a borrowed coat, she wasn't so sure. Still, she gathered her courage and walked to the counter. "Hi," she said softly. "Just a small caramel latte, please." The barista smiled. "That'll be $4.95. Maya fumbled through her coins, her cheeks reddening as she counted slowly. I think I have, yeah, $5 exactly." She smiled awkwardly, pretending it didn't sting to hand over her last bill. As she sat down with her latte, she whispered to herself, "At least I can say I tried." Meanwhile, across the city, Ethan Hale was running late. At 36, he was the youngest CEO in his company's history. The Hale Group, a name that owned half the cafe chains in the city, including the one he was now hurrying toward. But for all his wealth and success, his life was painfully quiet. He'd built an empire, yet lost his marriage to ambition. His assistant had convinced him to take the evening off. "You need to meet someone real for a change," she'd said. "Someone who doesn't care about money." He'd agreed, reluctantly. But when he arrived, drenched from the rain, his usual confidence melted away. He scanned the cafe, and that's when he saw her, sitting by the window, cradling a cheap latte like it was the last warmth in her world. Something about her stillness drew him in. "Hi, Maya," he asked gently. She looked up, startled, then shyly smiled. "Yes, you must be Ethan." He nodded, pulling out a chair. "Sorry I'm late." "No worries," she said softly. I got here early." They both laughed awkwardly. As the minutes passed, conversation flowed easier. She talked about her patients, the old man who called her his angel, the little girl who drew her pictures every day. He listened, captivated. No one had ever spoken about kindness with such humility. "So," she asked finally, "what do you do?" Ethan hesitated. For the first time in years, he didn't want his job to define him. "I work in coffee," he said truthfully, his lips curving in amusement. "Oh really?" She smiled. "Then maybe you can tell me why it's $5 for something I could make at home." He chuckled, trying not to laugh too loud. "You'd be surprised how expensive kindness is in a cup." Their laughter filled the air, and for a moment, both forgot who they were, a tired nurse and a lonely CEO. Hours passed before they realized the cafe was closing. Maya reached for her coat, embarrassed. "I should get going. I have an early shift." He stood too, hesitant. "Can I walk you out?" Outside, the rain had stopped, leaving the world glistening and quiet. As they reached her bus stop, Ethan noticed her worn shoes soaked through. "Maya," he said softly, "do you need a ride?" She shook her head. "Thank you, but I can't afford to owe anyone anything right now." He smiled sadly. "You don't owe me." Sometimes kindness doesn't need change. Her heart stung, not because of pity, but because she hadn't heard words like that in a long time. "Thank you," she whispered. "For tonight." As she boarded the bus, she didn't look back. But Ethan did. Watching her disappear down the rainy street felt strangely painful, like losing something he didn't know he was searching for. The next morning, Maya rushed to the hospital, late again. Her patient, Mr. Daniels, was waiting with a grin. "You're famous, Miss Brooks." She blinked. "What?" He pointed to the TV mounted in the corner of the ward. The morning news showed a familiar cafe, the one from last night. The reporter was saying, "Greater than, the Hale Group's CEO, Ethan Hale, has announced a new initiative, free coffee for healthcare workers across the city." He says it was inspired by a nurse he met who spent her last $5 to buy a drink. Maya froze. Her heart pounded as the screen showed Ethan's face, calm, kind, unmistakable. He was the CEO. The cafe's CEO. Her blind date. Later that week, as she left the hospital after another exhausting shift, a sleek black car pulled up beside her. The window rolled down. Ethan's familiar smile met her stunned expression. "I thought you worked in coffee," she teased gently. "I do," he said with a playful grin. "Just on a slightly larger scale." She laughed, shaking her head. "You didn't have to do all that, the free coffee thing." "I know," he said quietly. "But I wanted to. You reminded me what kindness looks like when it costs something. I'd forgotten that." He paused, holding out a small takeaway cup. "Caramel latte. On the house. But only if you agree to dinner." Maya looked at the cup, then at him, the man who could buy the world, yet chose to remember her $5. She smiled. "All right, Mr. CEO, but only if you promise not to buy the restaurant." He laughed. "Deal." Weeks passed. Their friendship grew into something gentle, something real. Ethan learned to slow down. Maya learned to trust again. One night, as they walked through the same cafe where they'd met, she looked around and said, "You know, I still can't believe I spent my last $5 here." Ethan smiled, taking her hand. "And it was the best investment you ever made." Sparkle's closing narration. Sometimes, life brings us to our lowest moment not to break us, but to show us that even small acts of hope can lead to something beautiful. Maya's last $5 didn't buy her coffee. It bought her destiny.